Look at the table in front of you. Next to the pepper, beside the napkin dispenser, sits a small glass shaker. You reach for it without thinking. You tip it over your meal. A brief shake, a dash of white crystals, and you move on. It costs almost nothing. You can buy a box of it for the spare change in your pocket. It is the most mundane, invisible ingredient in your kitchen, but look closer at those falling crystals. You are looking at the foundation of human civilization. You are holding the catalyst for ancient empires, the funding for devastating wars, and the hidden force that carved the trade routes of the world. Before oil, before gold, before silver, there was this: salt. To understand how something so common once ruled the world, you must forget everything you know about modern convenience. You must forget refrigerators and global shipping. You must imagine a world where the seasons dictate your survival, where a harsh winter or a failed harvest means starvation. In this ancient world, time is your greatest enemy. Meat rots, harvests decay, unless you have salt. It is the magic stone that stops time. It draws the moisture out of flesh, halting the invisible rot, preserving the bounty of summer for the dead of winter. It is not a mere flavour. It is life itself. Win the clock back to 6,000 years before the birth of Christ. You are standing on the shores of Lake Yuncheng in northern China. The summer sun beats down, baking the shallow waters. You step into the mud, a woven basket in your hands. As the water evaporates, it leaves behind a glittering white crust. You scrape it up crystal by crystal. This is the world's first known salt harvest. Here, in the cradle of the Yellow River civilization, you are pulling survival directly from the earth. The Chinese emperors will soon realize the immense power of these white crystals. They will levy the world's first state tax on it, using the revenue to forge armies and build the Great Wall. But the power of salt cannot be contained to one empire. Travel west, through the turning pages of history, until you find yourself marching under the banners of the Roman Republic. It is the 1st century BC. You are a legionnaire, tired and covered in the dust of the Italian peninsula. Your armour is heavy, your sandals worn. You're marching down a wide, paved highway leading out of Rome. This is not just any road, this is the Via Salaria, the Salt Road. You are guarding a convoy of heavy carts groaning under the weight of salt crystals hauled from the marshes of Ostia. Rome's absolute control over this trade gives it dominance over its neighbours. When your commander hands you your monthly wages, it is not always in silver denarii. Sometimes it is measured out in pure white salt. It is your salarium, your salary. You are literally earning your salt. The very word you use to describe a soldier's pay, the root of modern wealth, is born from these bitter, life-giving crystals. As the centuries roll on, the hunger for salt builds the invisible architecture of the world. You're no longer a Roman soldier. It is now the 14th century, and the air around you is dry, blistering, and suffocating. You are a Tuareg nomad, leading a massive camel caravan across the unforgiving ocean of sand known as the Sahara. The sun is a blinding white disk above you. For weeks you see nothing but endless dunes. It is a journey of madness, a route paved with the bones of those who lost their way. But you press on because strapped to the flanks of your camels are heavy, gleaming slabs of rock salt, carved directly from the dry beds of Tahaza. To the people of the Mediterranean, salt is drawn from the sea. But here, deep in the desert, it is mined from the earth like coal. You're making your way south, toward the great Mali Empire, toward the fabled city of Timbuktu. In the humid forests of West Africa, salt is scarce, and the human body loses it rapidly through sweat. Without it, the people will cramp, weaken, and die. And so, when you finally arrive at the trading post along the Niger River, you witness an exchange that defies modern logic. The merchants of Mali step forward. They place gleaming, pure gold dust on the ground, and in return, you give them the equivalent weight in salt, an ounce of salt for an ounce of gold. This staggering trade funds the reign of Mansa Musa, creating an empire so rich it destabilizes the economies of the Mediterranean just by spending its wealth. Now, shift your gaze north, to the dark waters of the Adriatic Sea. It is the height of the Middle Ages. You're a merchant of Venice, standing at the prow of a wooden galley. History tells us that your city grew rich on silks and exotic spices from the east. But you know the quiet truth. The foundation of Venetian power is the salt pans of the lagoon. You do not just trade salt. Here you control it. You and your fellow merchants have ruthlessly cornered the market, destroying rival saltworks across the Adriatic, forcing neighbouring states into crippling treaties. When you sail to Constantinople or Alexandria, you carry Venetian salt to buy Eastern luxuries. You manipulate the price, creating artificial shortages to fill the coffers of the Doge. The grand palaces of Venice, sinking beautifully into the water, were financed not just by velvet and pepper, but by a ruthless, absolute monopoly on sodium chloride. Wherever there is salt, there is power, and wherever there is power, there is resistance. It is the spring of 1930. The air is thick with heat and the quiet hum of a revolution. You're walking along a dusty road in Gujarat, India. Beside you walks a slight man with wire-rimmed glasses, and he's leaning on a bamboo staff. Mahatma Gandhi. You're walking toward the Arabian Sea. The British Empire has laid claim to the very waters of India. The colonial government has imposed a brutal tax on salt, forbidding Indians from collecting or selling it. It is a tax on survival, hitting the poorest the hardest. For 24 days you march. The crowd swells from dozens to thousands, a river of humanity moving toward the coast. When you finally reach the village of Dandi, you watch as Gandhi steps into the surf. He reaches down into the mud and scoops up a handful of saline earth. He boils it. He makes salt. It is a simple, quiet action. But with that handful of mud, you are witnessing the fracturing of the British Empire. By defying the salt laws, a nation is awakened. Millions begin to boil their own seawater, filling the jails, breaking the monopoly, and proving that no empire can truly own the earth and the sea. Salt is never just salt. It is the ink with which human history was written. When you look at a map of the world today, you're looking at a map drawn by the desperate need for preservation. Cities like Munich, Salzburg, and Syracuse were built because of their proximity to salt. The great canals of China were dug to transport it. The deep roads of Europe were carved by wagons carrying it. Our languages are heavily seasoned with it. If you have ever tossed a salad, preserved salami, or eaten a sausage, you are speaking the ancient tongue of the salt merchants. Today, the wars have ended. The great monopolies have crumbled. Modern chemistry and mechanical refrigeration have stripped salt of its ancient power. It has been demoted from a currency to a condiment. It has become so cheap, so abundant, that we forget what it took to bring it to our tables. We forget the Roman legions marching in the dust. We forget the camel caravans lost in the Sahara. We forget the empires that rose and fell just to secure a pinch of it for the winter. So the next time you sit at a table and reach for that small glass shaker, pause for just a moment. Look at the white crystals falling onto your plate. You're not just seasoning your food, you're sprinkling the dust of empires, the sweat of ancient merchants, and the silent, invisible force that built the world.